Hey everybody, it's Jim and Paul with your weekly lineup. Starting at Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern, we got the Twisted Southern Horror Queen with Arthur Lynn Gibson. And at 10 p.m. Eastern, we got Straight Talk with Matt Hazley.
And on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, we have Talk Time with Val. At 10 p.m., it's Rock Talk with Amy Shafalo.
And on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, we got Sports Insider with Glenn Spellman and Sean Allen. And at 10 p.m. Eastern, we have Straight Talk with Matt Hazley.
And on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, we got Paw Talk with Jim and Paul. At 9 p.m., Cosmopolitans with Lauren. At 10 p.m., we have Night Talk with Joe Rocks. And at 12 p.m. Eastern, we have Trudy Light.
On Fridays at 9 p.m., we have Sports Insiders with Glenn Spellman and Sean Allen again. And at 10 p.m., we have Straight Talk with Matt Hazley. That's your weekly lineup. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much.
The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions, and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Talk Time with Val. Oh, I'm tired, but a good tired. How are you doing today, Jimmy?
I'm wonderful.
In a deadpan tone of voice, he says, I'm wonderful. Are you tired, Jimmy?
No, not really.
Well, tonight's show I have lined up is kind of a nod to Valentine's Day. Everybody gets obsessed with quote unquote, use the air quotes, holidays, right? When it's Easter, oh my god, it's like chocolate everywhere, Easter bunnies and pics and all kinds of weirdness. When it's Christmas, same thing. Halloween, same thing. Valentine's Day, oh my god, people go nuts. And one aspect of Valentine's Day that really, really gets to me, like annoys the hell out of me, is people who are not in a relationship thinking that they're failures or losers, or feeling like they should have to, just find somebody, anybody, some random person for that day. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. You don't find love in 5 minutes of hot, sweaty carnal indulgences in the back of a restaurant bathroom. Right, Jimmy?
Right.
Love is a very intrinsic, special thing. You know what? It's different for everybody. Love is truly the one thing that you can say is specifically defined by each person who feels it. No two people feel love in the same way. That being said, I'm not going to deal with love because, quite frankly, people have been trying and failing, and some have been successful, but people have been attempting to define love and give meaning to, the tender feelings and emotions for centuries, millennia, actually. Instead, what we're going to look at is the more fun side to Valentine's Day and where it got its roots. Not historically speaking, but, just kind of a nod to it. We're going to talk about sex. Right, Jimmy?
Oh, sex. I thought you said specs.
No, sex. What, you need glasses? You trying to see what I'm talking about? I promise you I will paint you a verbal picture, dude. Of course, you might want to look away at some of these pictures. They're pretty odd. One thing I will say about love, I don't think that there is a dearer, sweeter love in somebody's heart than for their child or their fur baby, their pet, who is being ultra adorable and cute, like Raja right now is attacking my curtains. And I know I should get on him for it because he's going to destroy the lace, but I don't have the heart to yell at him. I mean, he's just too cute. You know what I mean, Jimmy?
Oh, yeah.
Just too adorable. Papa, don't do that. See, we have these, I don't know, I spoke about them a few months ago, but have you noticed these weird little, they almost look like stink bugs, right? Like a flattish, brown, beetle-y looking bug that with wings. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I don't know, like, part of me wants to say they kind of look like a rhino beetle, but they don't really. They look like the bugs I remember seeing on flower plants in the Caribbean. Anyway, I've seen articles where people are like, these bugs are becoming a problem in North America. They don't bite. They don't destroy your property. They don't do anything really. But during the winter months, they somehow find a way to get into your house. Whether they hide in the door jambs and cracks or whatever it is, they hitch a ride. Somehow they find their way into your home. Some of them crawl up through drains, apparently. But it's not like it's an infestation. It's literally one or two. But I don't have the heart to kill them. So Mitzi and Raja go nuts hunting them. And if there's one on the outside of the window, he will pounce on that curtain for the entire day trying to get at the bug that's on the outside of the curtain, like the glass. Have you ever noticed that, Jimmy? Do your cats do that?
No. But there's a bug in the house, they'll chase it down.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I had a mosquito. Did I tell you about this? A few months ago, there was a mosquito in the house, right? But it was a weird-looking mosquito. It wasn't like the mosquitoes I'm accustomed to back in Trinidad. It was like, it had like legs like a freaking daddy long-legged spider.
That's the male.
Okay, well, long, thin legs, a super long body, and this freaking thing was as big as my thumb.
Those are the males.
I have, well, the tip of my thumb. I've never
and
seen...
I believe the only ones that bite are the females.
Okay, well, I didn't know, but it freaked me out. It was like, I want to say it was so big, and it was like a weird kind of reddish-brown color, not black. Anyway... So this thing is flying around, and this is a couple months ago, and Mitzi and Raja are chasing it, and it's perched on, excuse me, on my ceilings in the living room, and in the catty corners in the living room, there are these ceiling hooks for hanging plants, right? This dang thing perched on one of those hooks, and I had cats trying to fly. Jimmy. I mean, they were like leaping off their cat tree, trying to fly at this thing, jumping all over the place. Raja slammed backwards into the door trying to catch it. Didn't stop him, right? I mean, it was nuts. I literally had to go and stand up in front of the TV and block the TV. Finally, I called to John, and John came to find out what it was, and he started laughing hysterically. Like, are you kidding me? You can't deal with a mosquito. I'm like, it's not the mosquito I can't deal with. It's the two super ninja cats who are trying to destroy the house, trying to get to it, right? So, John, being John, of course, being a giant, can reach the ceilings easily, and he just grabbed a paper towel and caught it and killed it. But it was like, to me, I'm not even kidding. You know those little shelves that I like to put up all over the place, like on the walls, how I put up those brass butterflies and those little shelves for little knickknacks and candles and stuff like that. The cats were climbing and trying to jump up on those shelves. They've never done it before. They have not done it since. But it was insane. It was completely...
Like high spawns.
What? Yeah, well, no.
They like high spawns.
They tried to climb up on that specifically to get to that mosquito. And they were leaping across the room. It scared the bejeebus out of me. And I know they like high spots. You want to hear what Raja did? He jumped up on my counters, which he knows is a big no-no. Because whenever he jumps up on the counter, I scrub down the counter, and then I always take the soap that I'm scrubbing the counter down with and dab him with some soap so he knows it's not done, right? That he's not supposed to do it. But he jumped up on the counter, jumped to the top of the fridge, and from the top of the fridge leaped over to the top of the cabinets. You know, that little space that's about maybe a foot between the ceiling and the top of the cabinets?
Yeah.
That's where he ended up. Man, I had John go online. I lined the counters with tape so that when he puts his little paws, or he tries to put his little paws on the tape, it sticks and he doesn't like it. And I had to booby trap the top of the fridge so he wouldn't want to get up there. He's not, he hasn't tried to get back in. I have a policy of no cats in the kitchen because I don't think it's sanitary if you're trying to cook and whatnot for them to be in there. And I hate the fact that if they go in there, I have to literally scrub down every counter, every surface, the doors on the cabinets, everything before I start my prep because I don't want a stray cat here.
You're not going to catch nothing.
It's not catching anything. It's just that I don't want a stray hair or dander or anything anywhere near my food. I'm very particular about the cleanliness of my kitchen.
You don't feel it after a while.
Well, I will never get used to it because I was raised differently.
That's what I said, but you get used to it.
If you say so. I mean, I've had Mitzi now for years. And Mitzi has never, ever, ever tried to be, you know, in the kitchen, touching things, trying to get into things. Mitzi sits across in the dining room on the chair, and she will look at you through the back of the chair while you're prepping everything, you know? And she will stare, but she won't actually come into the kitchen because she knows it's a no-no. But Mitzi is hyper intelligent. Like, you speak to her, and she knows. I don't know how else to explain it. Like, I'll say, all right, baby, mommy's going in the kitchen. You can sit and watch me, but you cannot come. And, like, if I bring potatoes or something into the living room to peel them, she knows that she has to be at least 5 feet away. She won't come near it. She'll sit and watch, avidly watch, but she won't come near. And you don't ever have to yell at her. You just say, no, 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 like, very gently, and she knows. So, I don't know. Maybe she's, like, you know, hyper ultra intelligent baby. My little kitty co-host, but Raja has kitten tendencies still. And John said yesterday that Raja is about 16 or 18 pounds already, Jimmy.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, he's growing like a weed. He's just, and he has this new thing that he does. He Tigger pounces. Like, he doesn't walk anymore. He bounds. Have you ever seen a cat do that?
What does he do?
He bounds.
What,
like when
leaps?
like he bounds across a room.
Yeah.
He doesn't walk, and he literally will Tigger bounce everywhere he's going. I've taken to calling him my little Tigger, and he thinks it's adorable because he comes running when I say it. And Mitzi has taken to smacking him down when he gets a little too excited. Yesterday she smacked him down and Zoe was visited. Zoe came about 5 minutes after she smacked him. And he went to Zoe to headbutt Zoe to get kisses and loves. And so she had both of them like very close to each other. She puts him down and Mitzi walks over and just kisses Raja, grooms him a little bit and then walks away. It's like, this is her thing. She will manners him or punish him for being naughty, but then she'll go over to him and kiss him and groom him and play with him. Then she'll walk away. I honestly think she thinks that she's his mother, you know. The way she behaves, it's so hilariously funny. But they show a lot of love. And speaking of love, let's get back to our program today. I don't even know how long I've been talking about my kitties. I could talk about them for hours. You know that, Jimmy?
I know.
But they're worth it, right? Did I tell you that Raja decided to try to steal raw meat? I don't know why he would try to do that.
To eat it?
Okay, but it's okay. I know he's a wild animal, or he comes from wild animals. But I give him so much food and pate, and I make them treats and all kinds of good things, and I get them like, good fish, like sushi grade ahi, tuna, salmon, things like that. Why is he trying to steal an entire pack of chicken?
Because it's different. And they're curious.
He's such a little weirdo sometimes. Like, I don't get it. Like, it's a pack of chicken in a plastic bag, just come in from the car. You bring the groceries and you put the groceries on the counter. But the meats, I always put the meat stuff on the floor in front of the fridge, right? The bags. And then I go outside and get the rest of the bags. I come back in and Raja's trying to drag the entire bag. It has a whole roasting chicken in it, right? It's like a chicken that's wrapped up in plastic on the styrofoam container. It's double bagged, and he is dragging the handles of the shopping bag, trying to pull this bag of chicken out. I don't know where he was gonna try to hide it. Maybe carry it down to the basement or something. But trying to drag the entire bag out. Tell me that's not weirdness. Wouldn't another cat try to open the bag and try to get at what's inside immediately? No, he decides to try to steal the whole bag.
Just like lions do with their kills, they try to hide them afterwards from the hyena.
You think, oh, okay. I didn't realize that. You're probably right. Because he does have, I was told that he's got Bengal and Serval in him. Wildcat breeds. Which is, you remember I was telling you that I didn't know why he chirps and doesn't meow?
Oh, when they see a bird or something?
No. Raja cannot meow. His vocal cords are not made for meowing. It's like a chirp sound. Did you know that some wild cats, like Bengal cats and Serval cats, that's how they communicate? They don't actually meow?
Okay.
Yeah, that's their voice. So I didn't know that. I just thought something was wrong. I thought maybe because, he was a wild cat, he was in the shelter for so long. I thought maybe it was something that happened when he was a kitten, an accident or something. No, that's how he communicates. And here's the weird thing. I went to Target and I found these little cute little fluffy bird type things with feathers on it. And when you touch it, it chirps like a canary or something, right? Like a lovebird. It'll coo or it'll chirp. And it's recorded bird noises, right? I bought it for him and he plays with it. I actually can't find that one anymore. I don't know what he's done with it. I'm sure it'll turn up 5 years from now somewhere. But the first week I had him, Jimmy, I swear I thought he ate it because of that chirping noise he was making. I didn't know. I've seen him sit down though and chirp at it. Like he'll touch it gently, it'll chirp, and he will chirp back at it. I don't know, it's very strange, but it's very cute. And did I tell you he faced down a possum?
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Possum came into our backyard and came up to the glass door by the kitchen. And Raja's sitting down. Of course, that's his area, right? That big glass door by the kitchen there, that's his. And he's sitting down there looking at the squirrels and all that stuff. And the security light, whenever there's movement outside, it comes on. So he likes to sit down there and watch. And when, in the nighttime, the security light hardly ever comes on, right? But this possum is so big, it trips that security light every time. I walked into the kitchen. My kettle was whistling. I had put it on a few minutes earlier because I wanted some tea. I walked into the kitchen to get my kettle, and I see his body kind of hunched, but he wasn't lying down or on all fours. He was on two legs. His front paws were not touching the glass, but they were up a little bit. But his shoulders were hunched up by his neck. And I'm like, what the, what's going on? And I look through the glass and there's these two pretty pearly black eyes staring at me. And a possum. And I know you probably don't think possums are pretty, but I'm telling you, this possum looked pretty, okay? That pretty face.
Yeah, we used to have them come to my porch every day to be fed.
Are they cute, right?
Yeah.
I thought he was adorable.
That and raccoons.
I thought he was completely adorable, and Roger was hunched up like that, and the possum kind of looked at him and then tilted its head. I don't know if it was the sound of the whistle from the tea kettle that drew it, or because it saw Roger and it was investigating, or what. But now, that was then. And so Roger didn't attack or pounce or anything. He slowly went back down onto all fours, looking at this possum. Possum was unconcerned because he knows it's a glass door, I guess, and he couldn't get, anything. I'm scared to say or do anything because I don't want to make either one of them jump or move, right? And I just switched the stove off. That's literally all I did. And I didn't even pour the water into my teacup, okay? Roger goes back down, he's staring at the possum, and then he does the strangest thing. After about a few minutes, it was like a few minutes of them staring at each other, he headbutts the door. The glass door. He headbutts the glass door, which he does when he's inviting someone to play with him, right? And then he takes his paw and he gently starts, patting the door. And the possum literally put its face closer to the door like they were going to be friends. I was wishing that I had a motion-activated camera in the back there just to catch that. It was the most amazing little thing, Now Mr. Possum comes and visits. He scooches in. There is a small space beneath the fence in the backyard. There's like a holly bush there. Excuse me. And I guess the possum or something dug a hole, and it comes in under the fence in the back there by the holly bush. And he comes and he visits, and the two of them just sit there and stare at each other. I think it's very, very strange. He likes corn, though. Mr. Possum does. I don't know. It's kind of
weird. The raccoons loved what's that orange melon? Cantaloupe. Yeah, they used to love that.
The raccoon here stole my pumpkin for Halloween. It was eating the pumpkin.
They gotta eat too.
I know, and I didn't mind, but the raccoons here, the first time I saw a raccoon, it was about, here where we're living, it was maybe about 30 feet away from me by a big maple tree, right? And I honestly thought it was a cat. I ran back inside saying, John, somebody's kitty is outside, thinking, okay, it's getting cold, right? We gotta try to either find this cat or, something, because I don't want the cat to be outside and get hurt or anything. He comes, he looks, he's like, are you sure? I'm like, look, there's the kitty right there. And I think it's hurt because it's moving weird. He comes and he looks and he's like, that's a raccoon. I'm like, I have 20/20 vision. He's like, yep, but I'm farsighted. So I didn't realize it was a raccoon. I honestly thought it was a cat, Jimmy. It was nighttime. It was about 30 feet away in my defense, but still. The raccoons come up and, they don't come to the front door often, but they come to the maple trees that line the back. And you said that they like cantaloupe. I don't know about that. I know they like pumpkin. I also know that they like corn, because I put corn out there for Mr. Possum, and they eat the corn. And they like, the bird seed. They sell cakes of, I don't know how you call it. Looks like a jug, right? And it's just hardened bird seed stuck together. It's like a bottle shape. You ever see that? Like a cone or a bottle shape?
No, really.
Well, they're about 7 or 8 inches high and about 4 or 5 inches wide. And sometimes they have a string or a piece of yarn running through them. And so you can hang it up, but it's like a bird seed cake. It's just different types of bird seeds and nuts and all kinds of things. You hang it from the tree for birds and squirrels and stuff to eat, right? Well, if there's a raccoon around, he will slice that yarn off and just take the entire thing with him. So, I don't think I think the raccoons are cute and everything, but I don't think I trust them. There's just something about the raccoons here. I don't trust them as much as I would say trust the possum. I wouldn't be scared to go outside in the yard if the possum is there. But for some reason, I think the raccoons, if you were to, I don't know, confront them or scare them or startle them, I feel like they would attack rather than run away. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Would they attack? Jimmy?
Say again?
Would they attack? Do you know?
With theater?
Would they attack?
With the possums or the raccoons?
Raccoons. The raccoons.
No, they're nocturnal and they won't attack unless they're rabid.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. So you don't have to worry about a raccoon attacking you unless it's rabid, in which case, it'll kill you. All right. How long have we been talking, Jimmy?
26 minutes.
I'm sorry. I've been talking about the cats, and I haven't really gotten into what I wanted to get into for the show. So when we come back, we're gonna deal with we have to break for commercials in about 3 minutes. So let me give you a lineup of what we're gonna be talking about today. What sex was like in ancient times. Now, Valentine's Day, brings the topic of sex. And a couple of days ago, a friend of mine sent me an article, and it was what sex was like in ancient Egypt. Let me tell you, this article was eye-opening, okay? It was like a train wreck. You don't want to look, but you can't look away kind of deal. And it got me thinking. It was like, dude, I wonder what it was like in, like, Rome and Greece and China and India, and it's like, I wonder what it was like back in the day for other people, other cultures. And some of the things that they did in ancient Egypt are so out of the realm of normalcy, of what we consider normal today, and yet was so normal back then. It had me thinking about how the times have changed and the historical factors that contribute towards societal development and psychological development. You know what I mean, Jimmy? Like what we accept as being the norm and what they accepted as being the norm, and what actually happened to change certain things from being everyday cultural okays to becoming societal taboos. Well, we're going to discuss that in a bit. But first, we have to break for commercials and pay some bills. So more on this when we return after these messages.
Are you hangry? Know the signs. Uncontrollable yelling.
Why aren't you egg rolls?
Hallucination.
Sushi.
Pants discomfort.
I hate you, pants.
Hangry. It can happen to anyone. Fortunately, there's E24, the app that tells hunger to shut up.
Egg rolls. Thanks, Snoop.
E24. In my medical opinion, it's the best way to order food online, baby.
Hey everyone, I want to tell you all about an amazing salon. Joyce's, located at 132 Ferry Street in Everett, Massachusetts. Joyce's specializes in the latest techniques in coloring, styling, cutting, and beach waves. Joyce's features Sukesha all-natural nutrient products and organic color. Joyce's full-service spa and salon, located at 132 Ferry Street, Everett, Massachusetts. 617-387-6688. Specializing in you.
And now, another fresh insight from Roger Berkowitz, President and CEO of Legal Seafoods.
If your wife can't take the time to test your tuna for purity,
then why should you take the time to come to a complete stop before letting her out of the car? Just saying. Legal Seafoods. If it isn't fresh, it isn't legal.
Hi, my name is Amrita Rupnarine, aka Valanissima. Amrita means ambrosia or nectar of the gods. Valanissima means the birth of divine knowledge. Join me every Thursday night at 10 p.m. Eastern for a night talk with Joe Rocks, exclusively on TuneIn Satellite on Armed Radio Global Network, where we will discuss food, culinary arts, baking, cooking, food preparation and presentation, bringing you a little bit of the divine knowledge so you can create your own nectar of the gods.
Plan your visit to Savino Vineyards in Woodbridge, Connecticut today. It's a family-owned and operated vineyard that grows premium grapes on 8 acres of land and produces a fine selection of wine on-site in a historic barn. Savino Vineyards is a bronze medal winner in the Amenti del Vino International Wine Competition, and wine tastings are only $7. Visit SavinoVineyards.com to find out more, and follow Savino Vineyards on Facebook. That's SAVINO Vineyards. Or call 203-389-2050 for more information.
Hi, and welcome back to this week's episode of Talk Time with Val. We're gonna go straight into what sex was like in ancient Egypt. So, you're gonna be like, what the heck is she talking about? But I promise you that these facts have been checked, and they are correct. This article was written by Aaron Edwards, and it promises to be an eye-opener. So, if you thought that the Romans and Greeks were liberal when it came to sex, prepare to be shocked. Sex in ancient Egypt had almost no limits, but that doesn't mean that they did everything you could think of. They didn't have orgies, but they pushed the boundaries that would make even the Romans balk. Sex with animals, sex with corpses, and sex with siblings weren't just practices seen in the noble families, but with citizens of every class. Did you get that, Jimmy? Incest, necrophilia, and bestiality were the norm. Okay?
Oh, yeah. Just like Sodom and Gomorrah.
Well, still, it wasn't like the streets of Egypt were overflowing with men and women having sex with corpses of animals. They actually had some strict rules about things like adultery and used early forms of birth control. They also kept records of their practices, which paved the way for advances in sex in the centuries since. So, if you were ever curious about how crazy things got in ancient Egypt, I have a list of ancient Egyptian sex facts for you. 1. Necrophilia was a thing. Everyone knows that Egyptians often practiced mummification, but the embalmers who did the process didn't always respect the corpse as much as they should have. There are reports that embalmers had sex with the corpses of famous or particularly beautiful women. Luckily, the practice was frowned upon, and if someone was discovered using the corpses for carnal purposes, they were denounced. There are also claims that some men kept the bodies of their wives in their bedrooms for a few days before they were embalmed. Which, ew, just ew. Right? Ugh. Number 2.
Gotta get that last goodbye in.
The last goodbye. I mean, they say that men kept the corpses of their wives. You think any women kept the corpses of their husbands? You have to.
If they're useless, what good are they?
Well, you have to think that if they propped it up just right with rigor mortis setting in. Huh. Ew. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next gross fact. They used dung and acacia gum for birth control. Dung. Did you hear me? Dung. The Egyptians were conscientious about making babies. Sometimes they just didn't want it to happen. So they found methods of birth control. On an ancient papyrus, it was discovered that they used gum made from the sap of the acacia tree because it had spermicidal properties. Okay, that's not bad, right? But listen to this. Among other contraceptives was a substance made from honey and sodium carbonate, as well as a pessary, a kind of a diaphragm, made from crocodile dung. Let's hope that they only used that last one if they were really, really desperate, right? Ugh, can you imagine a diaphragm made from crocodile dung? Why would you want to imagine that? Ugh. Okay, this one here is kind of funny. Cleopatra is rumored to have made a vibrator out of bees. Cleopatra was no stranger to sex. When the Romans came around, Cleopatra had an illegitimate son with Julius Caesar. Later, she hooked up with Mark Antony, which ended up costing her her life. When she didn't have any Roman men around to seduce, she'd find ways to entertain herself. Rumor has it that she filled a box with bees and used it as a vibrator. Now, talk about ingenuity, right? They do say that necessity is the mother of all invention. I guess she had needs that could not be filled. Huh. Are you there, Jimmy? I thought you would get a kick out of that one. I guess you're not there anymore. Egyptians had a lot of sex with animals, even crocodiles. You heard it, crocodiles. Egyptian gods and goddesses often took the shape of animals, so the Egyptians really didn't have much of a problem with having sex with just about anything with four legs. In fact, there are hieroglyphs depicting bestiality going all the way back to 3000 BCE. Men often had sex with cows, while women got down with dogs. There are even reports of sex with apes. The most dangerous sex act they ever attempted? Sex with a crocodile. There were apparently masters of the act who figured out how to not get eaten in the process. Excuse me. Jimmy? 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 I guess he stepped away. But can you imagine?
I'm here.
Are you ever going to get that desperate, Jimmy?
What's that?
The last one I just talked about was sex with crocodiles.
No, thanks.
Right? And you missed one. I guess you stepped away to get a drink or something?
Coffee.
I was telling you, Cleopatra is rumored to have made a vibrator out of bees. We all know Cleopatra
that's pretty cool.
Well, she was no stranger to sex, right? And she had an illegitimate son with Julius Caesar. Later, she hooked up with Mark Antony. But when she didn't have any Roman men around to seduce, she had to find a way to entertain herself. Rumor had it she filled a box with bees and used it as a vibrator. I was saying, I guess she had needs that, could not be filled. Necessity being the mother of all invention. You think that's cool?
That's quite the risk. What if they,
Oh my god. Alright, you want to hear something gross about Egyptian mythology? Now, do you know who Seth and Horus were?
No.
They were gods, right? Seth was the uncle of Horus in Egyptian mythology, and they were like the gay divine odd couple. Back in the day, the divine figures were all about three things: fighting each other, tricking each other, or having sex with each other. The gods, Seth and Horus, had an especially contentious relationship filled with sexual tension. Eventually, Seth just had sex with Horus to show him who was top dog. Had Seth managed to penetrate Horus, the other gods would have shunned Horus for being in the submissive position. But Seth's mother Isis intervened. That's Horus's grandmother, right? Horus caught Seth's semen in his hand and threw it into the river. Then Isis took Horus's semen and spread it over some lettuce, which she then fed to Seth. Talk about salad dressing, man. Ugh! Ultimately, because of this deception, the gods decided Horus penetrated Seth and looked negatively upon him. There is something to be said about overbearing mothers, apparently. Now, you think that's the weirdest thing about the Egyptian gods and goddesses? Apparently, they loved incest. Most people in ancient Egypt did not engage in incest, or at least there's little record of it. The Egyptian gods, however, were about as incestuous as it got. Plenty of siblings married each other, including Seth and Nephthys, Osiris and Isis, and She and Tefnut. Because royalty loves to be just like the gods, siblings ruling over Egypt were known to marry each other. Unfortunately, all that inbreeding led to very weak family lines with a lot of genetic defects, right? It's just what it is, apparently. So, no one really cared about virginity in ancient Egypt, Jimmy. It wasn't a thing. The Egyptians didn't put much emphasis on virginity. In fact, marrying a virgin carried no special significance. Premarital sex was openly practiced, and as long as it was done between two unmarried people, there was no stigma attached. Virginity also didn't have the same religious significance that it did for the Romans. Cheating on your spouses was a big no-no, however. While premarital sex was just fine, I mean, you could bonk whoever or whatever you wanted before you were married, okay? But once you were married, you were more or less locked into that union. Married women were considered especially sacred, so adultery was considered a big taboo. In fact, a man could have his genitals cut off for raping a married woman. A consensual affair with a married woman could be punished by both parties being whipped, mutilated, or in some cases executed. Of course, a married man who had sex with an unmarried woman only had to deal with some shame from society. So it was okay for you to cheat on your wife with somebody who was unmarried. But if you did it with somebody who was married, God helped you. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I know.
Now, let's go back to the gods. In art, sex is not usually explicitly detailed, though since much artwork was either in tombs or in temples, it can be argued that their sexual acts were not depicted so as to avoid their desecration. That is not to say that the ancient Egyptians never drew graphic pictures. Often, at least one party was drawn as an animal to censor the act, as the Egyptians had a certain prudishness towards illustrations of sex between two humans. Beyond this, the ancient Egyptians did not seem to be terribly shy about sex. Their mythology relies heavily on sexual themes, and there are many possible coded messages and euphemisms about sex riddled within the art itself. For example, King Tutankhamun was shown on a chest using a bow, while his wife stands by his feet with an arrow at the ready. The verb to shoot in the ancient Egyptian language also means to ejaculate. This is symbolic of the need to have sex in order to be reborn after death. Moreover, their religion itself was steeped in sexual themes, including the Ithyophallic god Min. Excuse me. As for art showing humans in sexually explicit positions, there is the famous example of graffiti of a pharaoh and a man, commonly thought to be Hatshepsut and Senenmut. it would have been highly taboo to draw the queen in this manner. Less crudely made, the infamous Turin erotic papyrus shows scenes of either animals or humans in various sexual acts and positions. Some consider it to be a satire on human manners and desires, as the animal vignettes on the first third of the papyrus suggest, which also mocks individuals of the upper class. Others consider it to be purely pornographic, and that it was used as such. So let's see. Let's go back to what we were talking about. There was a masturbation myth. Did you know that, Jimmy?
A masturbation myth?
Yep, in ancient Egypt. Masturbation myth. Where the Christians and Greeks had human women or gods give birth to divine figures, the Egyptians didn't need a vessel for their all-powerful beings to come into the world. The myth goes that the god Ra arose out of nothing, then got to work on making the world. He spat two gods out of his mouth, who in turn gave birth to other gods. In later versions of the tale, however, instead of spitting the first two gods out, he makes them through masturbating. That sure beats giving up a rib, huh?
Yeah.
But, I mean, seriously? Like seriously? Okay. So some of these have you know gone through. We'll actually talk about lesbianism after. Hold on. There's a famous piece of papyrus porn. Unlike ancient Rome, the ancient Egyptians weren't very liberal with their use of pornography. Erotic imagery certainly existed, and the most famous example of which is a papyrus with a series of sexual vignettes known as the Turin erotic papyrus. 8.5 feet long and 10 inches high, 2/3 of the papyrus is devoted to a disgusting, disheveled man having sex with a young woman. Different positions are shown, including one where they're having sex on a chariot. What do you think, Jimmy? What do you think about that?
Sex in a chariot, something new.
Well, I guess that's probably, it's been done in American cinema for quite a while, right? Everybody wants to have sex in the back of a car when they're a teenager. It's the only place they can get privacy.
Yeah.
Okay. When Egyptologists first uncovered the tomb of Neankakunum and Khnumhotep at Saqqara, they were shocked to see that these two men not only shared a tomb, but that there were also artwork depicted them as close, very intimate poses. Rather than believing that they were in a romantic and or sexual relationship, the theory was immediately proposed that these two were merely brothers, nothing else. Some have even gone so far as to assert that I can't even pronounce his name properly. Neankakunum and Khnumhotep were conjoined twins to explain why they were touching so often in artwork. They are depicted embracing in the same manner as heterosexual couples, which carries the same connotations of closeness in the context of sexual relations. And this has spawned some very intense debates. The theory of them being siblings is a weird heteronormative approach to this relationship that quite honestly is baffling to the mind. They could not be lovers because their wives and children are depicted on their tomb walls. This is not an adequate response. First, let's break it down. Behavior does not equal orientation. Because it was important to have children to care for their cult after death, their wives may have only served as a means to an end. As much as they loved one another, both men could not reproduce together, necessitating them to find wives to fulfill this purpose. However, this is under the biphobic suggestion that these two men must be monosexual. Both could have been attracted to multiple genders or sexes, and so may have had a romantic and or sexual attachment to their wives and to each other. Now, there's another tale of Neferkari and Sassanet, a more than likely fictional tale from either the 18th or the 19th or the 25th dynasty. Neferkari was a pharaoh, and Sassanit was one of his generals. The story goes that a man named Tajeti saw Neferkari walking somewhere during the night and decided to follow him. The pharaoh went to Sassanet's house, where he stayed for quite some time in the embrace of his lover before returning to his home. This process would then repeat itself. This tale alludes to the relationship between Osiris and Ra, the latter rising to fulfill his duties as a sun deity at the end of their nightly embrace. It is a parody piece of that myth, and is useful in determining that, given the tone, homosexual relations at this point in time were scandalous, but were not so taboo as to be unmentionable. Lesbianism. Excuse me. You don't want to hear about lesbianism, do you, Jimmy? Jimmy? Jimmy's not interested in lesbians. Yep. You're not interested in lesbians, are you?
No, not at all.
Not at all. So you don't want to hear about the lesbianism. I should just skip over this part?
Yeah.
But
let's get to the homosexuality.
We just discussed the homosexuality.
All right. Well, now let's get to the good stuff.
So we might as well discuss the lesbianism just for, factual basis.
There you go.
Okay. As to whether or not two women could be stigmatized for being in a relationship, it is unknown. There are some readings of Nefertiti being a lesbian due to her infertility and the ambiguous sexual orientation of her husband. While I'm not sold on Nefertiti being a lesbian, though, she and Isis had a close enough relationship, I can certainly believe it. I would think that female homosexuality would likely not be seen as strange or as a threat. Some background on this? The third gender in ancient Egypt. Okay? The notion of gender complexity is deeply rooted in ancient Egyptian culture. In the Egyptian story of the creation of the gods, the first god is male and female, and its name is Atum. Through asexual reproduction, Atum creates two other gods, Shu and Tefnut. These two, in turn, produce another pair, Keb and Nut. Finally, Keb and Nut, the earth and the sky, combine and produce two pairs of Isis and Osiris, and Seth and Nefertiti. In the stories of these archetypal beings, Isis exemplifies the reproductive female, Osiris the reproductive male, Seth the non-reproductive eunuch, and Nefertiti the unmarried virgin or lesbian. Seth and Nefertiti are supposed to be a couple like Isis and Osiris, but they have no adventures together and no children. Nefertiti spends all of her time with Isis, being of assistance to her in various ways. Seth, likewise, spends all of his time with Osiris and then with Osiris' son, Horus. But unlike Nefertiti, he spends his time causing all kinds of havoc. Seth and Osiris are in competition for primacy among the gods. Seth kills Osiris by cutting him into pieces and scattering them all over Egypt, but Isis, with the aid of her sister Nefertiti, gathers the pieces back together and revives him long enough for him to impregnate her. Isis then bears a son, Horus, and Osiris goes to throw it into the river. A son, Horus, and Osiris goes to rule in the afterlife. Next, Seth turns his attention to Horus, attempting to discredit him as a male by having sex with him. On his mother's advice, Horus catches Seth's ejaculation in his hand. He then brings the semen to Isis, who throws it into the river. Then she takes some of Horus's seed and sprinkles it on Seth's favorite food, the non-sexually reproducing lettuce, which Seth eats. Seth, thinking his semen is in Horus, although he himself has actually eaten Horus's seed as salad dressing, appears with Horus before the judges, who will determine who has primacy among the gods. Seth tells the judges to call to his semen so that it can respond, telling where it is. They do, and his semen responds from the reeds along the river, making it seem as though Seth was sterilely pleasuring himself down by the river. Then they call to Horus's semen, and it responds, much to Seth's surprise, from Seth's own belly. Seth is disgraced, and Horus assumes the role as prime god. Tell me this is not some sick stuff here, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Another version of this story, referred to in the Book of the Dead, says Seth cast filth into the eye of Horus, causing it to emit liquid. What exactly is meant by filth is open to question. In response, Horus attacks the testicles of Seth. Perhaps Seth ejaculated into Horus's eyes. In any case, Horus is always spoken of in terms of the regained strength of his eye, and Seth in terms of the loss of his virility. Seth's behavior may be considered inappropriate and harmful, and he may lose face, but he unquestionably displays exclusive homosexual tendencies, which means a homosexual is one of the most ancient central archetypes in Egyptian mythology. And Seth is described as having impotent testicles, which is consistent with my thesis that exclusively homosexual men in the ancient world were defined as eunuchs. The intrigues among the gods have been interpreted to reflect not only human interactions, but the interaction of the Nile with the surrounding desert. The Nile, symbolically, is Osiris, who contributes the fluid that brings life. The dryness of the desert is Seth, who kills off life. When the desert dryness becomes too powerful, the river dries up and is divided into thousands of pools along the entire riverbed. The evaporated liquid comes together in the sky, female principle or Isis, and rain falls down, replenishing the river temporarily. The river brings forth new life, Horus, in the form of vegetation. Thus life wins out over death in the never-ending struggle. Now, we were talking about lesbianism. How does Nefertiti's, Seth's third gendered counterpart, fit into this scheme? Excuse me. She provides an instructive example. She is initially childless and spends all of her time with Isis. She does, however, eventually have a child, not by her husband, Seth, but by Osiris. In the allegory of the Egyptian landscape, Nefertiti has been said to represent the desert ground outside the reach of the Nile's flooding. On rare occasion, the Nile exceeds its limits and flows out into this desert ground, producing vegetation. This story of Nefertiti exemplifies a difference between gay men and lesbians, in that a woman who is unattracted to men is still able to engender a child through sex with a man, but a man who is not attracted to women will not easily get an erection with a woman, which is prerequisite to his having procreative sex. Since gender was traditionally defined as a role in procreation, with the male being the one who reproduces in another person's body, and the female being the one who reproduces in her own body, the eunuch, or exclusive homosexual, who does not reproduce either in his own body or in another person's body, is neither male nor female. But a lesbian, in spite of her lack of attraction to men, does not necessarily sacrifice her femaleness, since she is not hindered in fulfilling the female role. Okay. So basically what it boils down to is that in ancient Egypt, you had heterosexual male, heterosexual female, homosexual male, and homosexual female. What you think about them apples, Jimmy?
A lot of sex going on.
Yep. And these were the myths of the gods, right? Okay. Zoophilia, or bestiality. The ancient Egyptians apparently engaged in bestiality often. From cows to dogs to crocodiles. This practice was illegal and carried high penalties, but amazingly, people continued to do it anyway. Let's see. There was a commentary. There are 4 references concerning men who have sexual contacts with animals in the Old Testament. Exodus 22:19, Leviticus 18:22-24, Leviticus 20:15 and 16, Deuteronomy 27:21, and 2 references concerning women, Leviticus 18:23 and Leviticus 20:16. The Talmud, a commentary on the Old Testament, specifically forbids a widow from keeping a pet dog, lest she be tempted to have sexual relations with it. Did you know that? A widowed Jewish woman cannot keep a pet dog, a male pet dog. In ancient Egypt, the ancient Egyptians worshipped gods with animal shapes almost exclusively in the pre-dynastic period before 3000 BC. Animal-human sexual contacts are occasionally portrayed on the tombs, and bestiality was recorded in Egyptian hieroglyphics as far back as 3000 BC. That was Ramses, right? Several kings and queens had a reputation of engaging in bestiality. Most famous was Cleopatra, who was said to have a box filled with bees, which she placed against her genitals for stimulation, similar to a vibrator. Egyptian men often had sexual intercourse with cattle or any other large domesticated animal, while the women resorted to dogs. Sexual contacts with apes were further reported for both men and women. And most interestingly, the Egyptians were reported to have mastered the art of sexual congress with the crocodile. This was accomplished by turning the creature onto its back, rendering it incapable of resisting penetration. This form of copulation was believed to bring prosperity and restore the potency of men. Holy Fraggle Rocks! So basically, if a man thought he was going impotent or he was having some type of erectile dysfunction, all he had to do was go wrestle a crocodile, flip it over its back, and rape it so he could prove his own sexual prowess, I guess. This is some crazy stuff. The Egyptians were also known to engage in worshipful bestiality with the Apis bull in Memphis, Egypt, and with goats at the Temple of Mendes. Okie dokie. The goats were further used as a cure for nymphomaniacs. Having said all that, bestiality was, however, punishable in Egypt by a variety of torture mechanisms, leading to death. So, yeah, it was punishable by death, but they still did it because, no guy wants to have ED, right, Jimmy?
Exactly.
Holy Fraggle Rocks. Okay, I need a break from this stuff. We need to go and pay some bills, so let's break the commercial. When we come back, we'll turn to ancient Greece, because hopefully it will be a little bit easier to look at Greece than Egypt after these messages right here on Talk Time with Val.
You big disgrace, kicking your can all over the place.
Are you hangry? Know the signs. Uncontrollable yelling.
Why aren't you egg rolls?
Hallucination.
Sushi.
Pants discomfort.
I hate you, pants.
Hangry. It can happen to anyone. Fortunately, there's E24, the app that tells hunger to shut up.
Egg rolls. Thanks, Snoop.
E24. In my medical opinion, it's the best way to order food online, baby.
Hey there, all you creepy people. This is Kevin Wayne from Portland, Oregon. You're listening to Armed Radio, home of the big guns.
Hey Dan, how's the day going so far?
My day couldn't be better. You pull up less than 3 minutes after I open my Lyft app, and how do you greet me? With a kind hello? Just delightful.
Great. Care for a cookie?
A cookie? A chocolate chip cookie? You know, I'd love one.
Sure.
Hey, let me ask you something. How did you know I love this song?
I mean, come on, it's the Cold War kids. Everybody loves them.
Whoa! Who taught this guy how to merge? That was a fantastic merge!
Couldn't agree more.
That's it? That's all this costs? What's this thing running on? Smiles and high fives? You son of Mike, I love you!
Thanks. Have a great day.
Lyft. Driving you happy. Just download and go.
And welcome back to this week's episode of Talk Time with Val. This is a weird episode. We're talking about the crazy things in ancient cultures that had to do with sex. Basically, that's the best way I can put it, man. So we discussed Egypt, right? And I thought, hey, you know what? Let's take a look at Greece, ancient Greek, because ancient Greek goddess and goddesses had a lot of sex. Right, Jimmy? I mean, you look at Greek murals, and what does man do? Man finds gods and goddesses to worship, and then they start trying to be more like those gods and goddesses. And can you think of any murals, aside from, like, any Anglo-Saxon or Caucasian murals, aside from the Romans, that had more sex than the Greek ones did?
No.
Well, in the world of the ancient Greeks, where gods were not just powerful beings who could do just about anything they wanted to, but were also crazy about sex, there were no limits to the things the gods had sex with. No limits, Jimmy. No limits. As something central to the lives of the Greek gods, sex in myths was always the motive, the goal, or the means. With that much action going on, it's not surprising that there are countless instances of weird sex in Greek mythology. The Greek gods had a lot of weird sex going on with all kinds of things, in all kinds of ways. But weird Greek god sex stories didn't stop there. Often the gods used their power to get laid. Even if that means turning themselves into something else, like a horse or a snake or even water. Some even prefer it that way. Many gods turn themselves into something weird before having sex just for the hell of it. The goddesses were not immune to weird sex practices either. Some weird Greek goddess sex stories involved having sex with other gods in the form of animals and more. So here's a list of weird things people in Greek mythology had sex with. You ready for this, Jimmy?
Go ahead.
Alright, make sure you're not eating or drinking anything, okay? Just warning you. Iphimedia had sex with her grandfather in the form of seawater. Despite being married to her own uncle, Aeolus, Iphimedia had always been obsessed with the sea god Poseidon. In some tellings, her grandfather. Iphimedia was so desperately in love that she would often go down to the seashore and pour the seawater into her vagina. At last, Poseidon approached her in the form of seawater, and Iphimedia became pregnant with the god's sons, Tus and Ephialtes, two giants who grew so rapidly that they exceeded the size of most humans by the age of 9. What you think about them apples, Jimmy?
Great story.
Uh-huh. Are you weirded out yet?
Not yet.
Alright, what about this one? Medusa had sex with a bird and then became cursed with hair of snakes.
No, that's getting a little weird.
You didn't think it was weird that she had sex with her grandfather and produced 2 gigantic sons, but the bird thing, that's getting a little weird.
That's weird.
There are many versions of the myth that explains how Medusa came to have the monstrous hair. or monstrous snake hair that will turn anyone who looks at her into stone. One version states that it has something to do with her sexual encounter with Poseidon. Poseidon's playing a big role here, isn't he? Medusa was in the temple of Athena when Poseidon saw and raped her, but not before he turned himself into a bird. Other versions say that the god turned himself into a horse, for reasons no one really knows. After that, the goddess Athena, who felt insulted by this act taking place in her temple, Athena was a very chaste goddess. You know, she had the Vestal Virgins and stuff. So she cursed Medusa with hideous snake hair. Medusa became pregnant from that encounter, and when she was later beheaded by Perseus, the winged horse Pegasus sprang from her neck. So, Poseidon has sex with his granddaughter and has 2 sons who are giants, rapes the virgin Medusa while she is in the temple of the chaste goddess Athena, and turns himself into a horse or a bird, or some version or variation of the two. Maybe a winged horse, maybe just a bird, maybe just a horse, maybe a half bird, half horse, half bird kind of hybrid thing. I have no idea. And Athena, in her rage for desecration of her temple, turns Medusa into a snake head. All right, you getting all this, Jimmy?
I'm getting it.
It's very interesting, if a little strange, right? So when you hear the story of Bellerophon and Pegasus, right, now all I'll think about is Pegasus springing from the blood welling out of Medusa's neck because she was raped by Poseidon, who decided he didn't know if he wanted to be a horse or a bird. This is some serious weirdness, and it's going to taint Greek mythology for me, because I love Greek mythology. I think it's one of the most interesting, well-written mythologies in the world. You know, it's like really good fantasy fiction, yeah?
Well, I can't tell the difference between that Roman or Egyptian.
Really? No, well, I mean, the Greek gods, I mean, the stories of Hercules and stuff like that, Helen of Troy, you know, the Odyssey, the Iliad, things like that. I thought it was, like, I loved it growing up. We had to do it in school, and there was this abridged version book that told, like, little clips and really, really tame versions, because now I'm reading the real thing, and really, really tame versions for kiddies, you know? Very interesting stories, though. Hephaestus. You know who Hephaestus is, right?
No.
Well, Hephaestus impregnated the earth, creating a boy so terrifying that he drove people to suicide. So we know that Athena was a really, really chaste goddess, right? Vestal Virgin type of goddess. Yeah? And she was like, I lost my page, dude. Excuse me. She was like, you know, just purity, basically. Hephaestus was the Greek god of blacksmiths, sculptors, metallurgy, fire, and volcanoes. And he symbolized a hammer, an anvil, and a pair of thongs. Basically, he's the one who created, like, Achilles' armor and things like that, right? So he was the creator of he was the blacksmith, basically. Athena had every reason to turn Hephaestus down. First and foremost, she was devoted to remaining a virgin. Second, Hephaestus was already married to Aphrodite, who is the goddess of love. Also, just to add to it, he was not very good looking. Even Aphrodite had only agreed to marry him as part of an arrangement made by Zeus. That didn't stop Hephaestus from trying to seduce Athena, however. The goddess fled, and Hephaestus attempted to rape her, but she fought him off. During the struggle, his semen fell on the goddess's thigh, and as she whipped it to the ground, the earth, that is Gaia, got pregnant. Almost in an instant, a boy emerged from the ground. Athena placed the baby in a box for safekeeping, but when 3 human women, princesses of Athens, opened the box and saw his hideous appearance, they went insane and leapt from the Acropolis, committing suicide. So, I don't even know where to go with this, but his name was basically King Erycthonius. He was a legendary early ruler of ancient Athens and Greece, and according to some myths, he was born of the soil of the earth and raised by the goddess Athena. Early Greek texts do not distinguish between him and Erectus, his grandson, but by the 4th century BC, during classical times, they become very distinct figures. You just heard about, well, basically this is how the story went, right? Athena visited the blacksmith god Hephaestus to request some weapons, but Hephaestus was so overcome by desire that he tried to seduce her in his workshop. Determined to maintain her virginity, Athena fled, but Hephaestus pursued her. He caught Athena and tried to rape her, but she fought him off, and during the struggle his semen fell on her thigh. Athena, in disgust, wiped it away with a scrap of wool and flung it down into the earth. As she fled, Erycthonius was born from the semen that fell to the earth. Athena, wishing to raise the child in secret, placed him in a box. Athena gave the box to the 3 daughters, Herse, Pandoras, and Aglaurus of Cecrops, the king of Athens, and warned them never to open it. Overcome with curiosity, Aglaurus and Herse opened the box, which contained the infant and future king, Erycthonius, that is, troubles born from the earth. Sources are unclear regarding how many sisters participated. The sisters were terrified by what they saw in the box, either a snake coiled around an infant or an infant that was half man, half serpent. They went insane and threw themselves off of the Acropolis. Other accounts state that they were killed by the snake. An alternative version of the story is that Athena left the box with the daughters of Cecrops while she went to fetch a limestone mountain from the Pallene Peninsula to use in the Acropolis. While she was away, Aglaurus and Herse opened the box. A crow saw them open the box and flew away to tell Athena, who fell into a rage and dropped the mountain she was carrying. As in the first version, Herse and Aglaurus went insane and threw themselves off to their death off of a cliff. This is some crazy stuff going on there. But here we go. Uranus impregnated the sea, creating Aphrodite. Did you know about that one?
No.
So you know Gaia is the mother Earth, right? Uranus was the sexual partner of his mother, Gaia. So incest. Together they bore the 12 Titans, the Cyclops, and the Hecaton series. However, Uranus grew intimidated by his children's power, so he prevented his children from being born and buried them back under the ground, which was technically also their mother's womb. Gaia asked her children for help, and Cronus, one of the Titans, was brave enough to castrate his father and throw his penis into the sea. A foam formed around the castrated penis, and Aphrodite was born from that foam, just like that. Blood from the injury also fell into the ground. The giants and the Furies were born. So every time you go to the ocean, Jimmy, and you have a swim, that sea foam is supposed to be the ejaculation of the god Uranus.
That's nice.
I know, right? Just so you know. I mean, knowledge is power. G.I. Joe. Oh my god, Mitzi is giving me this look like, what are you talking about, Mama? What are you talking about? Okay. There's another one called Ganymede. Well, this one is about Ganymede. Ganymede was kidnapped and raped by an eagle, apparently. Now, Zeus didn't only use his transformation abilities to have sex with women. According to mythology, Zeus also liked to entice young men. To entice a young man named Ganymede, Zeus turned himself into something more manly, a tough, robust eagle. First, he abducted Ganymede and brought him to Olympus, then made him his lover and the cupbearer to the gods. When Ganymede disappeared, his father, King Tros of Troy, grieved so deeply that Zeus felt the need to bring him presents in apology. 2 strong horses that could run over water. Zeus's love affair with Ganymede was a controversial story in Greek mythology. Some said Plato used this myth to justify his feelings towards male pupils at a time when homosexuality was frowned upon. Okay. Leda had sex with a swan, inciting the Trojan War. So, Zeus came upon Leda, the wife of King Tyndareus, and was instantly attracted to her. You're getting a little bit of a trend here, Jimmy.
Fuck anything that moves.
And turn themselves into anything too. Zeus and Poseidon, pretty much, right?
Right.
Like Zeus turned himself into the image of a soldier who went off to war, right? And threw the man's wife and begat Hercules. But apparently he had other little picadillos. No wonder Hera was so mad at him all the time. Huh. Okay. Zeus came upon Leda, the wife of King Tyndareus, and was instantly attracted to her. At the same moment, an eagle flew nearby, so Zeus turned himself into a swan and emerged to protect Leda from the eagle. But of course, Zeus was not known for selflessly helping others. He only protected Leda to have his way with her. So the gods seduced Leda in the form of a swan, and she became pregnant. Leda laid 2 eggs after being impregnated by Swan Zeus, and from these eggs hatched the female twins Helen of Troy and Clytemnestra, and the male twins Castor and Pollux. But because the queen had sex with her husband the same night, no one could tell which of her 4 children were whose. The poet W.B. Yeats wrote the well-known poem Leda and the Swan, based on the incident, connecting the seduction, or rape, depending on the telling, of Leda to the birth of Helen of Troy and the Trojan War. Not just fuck everything that moves, Jimmy, but apparently rape anything that they want to as well.
To be a god.
Good lord, Jimmy. Okay, so this one is Danae was seduced by a shower of golden raindrops. Why does that sound so gross? Okay, I'm scared to read this one. Alright, Danae was the only child of King Acrisius, I think that's how it's pronounced, Acrisius of Argos, who was devastated because he didn't have any sons to be his heirs. Upon hearing the prophecy that his daughter would bear a son that would kill him, King Acrisius locked Danae in a doorless and windowless chamber to keep her from having sex and subsequently having children. However, Zeus was attracted to the princess and devised a way to be with her. He turned himself into a golden rain, streaming down into Danae's chamber and entered her body, still in the form of water. Danae became pregnant with Perseus, who later beheaded Medusa and killed his grandfather in accordance with the prophecy. Excuse me. Golden rain, Jimmy?
Sounds like a golden shower.
Is it me, or were the Greeks simply weird? Like seriously, there's some seriously messed up stuff in here. And when you look at it, with human beings attempting to be more like the gods that they worship, oh my god, it's a wonder that anybody had time to create all that beautiful art, history, literature, the humanities, all of the different canonizations for the Renaissance that came out of ancient Greece. It's amazing they had time for any of that with all the sex and sex stuff going on, right?
Right.
My lord. Theophane. Do you know who Theophane was? Let's find out.
No.
Theophane was turned into a sheep, then had sex with another sheep. I'm gonna take a couple of tablets. Give me 1 second. Huh. Theophane was so beautiful that many men wanted her. I guess this whole sheep thing that people talk about with the New Zealand farmers, well, now we know where it comes from, right? Theophane was so beautiful that many men wanted her. Poseidon decided to stay ahead of the competition by taking Theophane off to an island to keep other suitors away. Maybe it was New Zealand, you don't know. But the other men were determined to find their beloved, so they sailed to the island to get her away from the sea god. When Poseidon realized their plan, he turned both Theophane and himself into sheep, and the rest of the island's citizens into cattle, to deceive the suitors. That's when Poseidon had sex with the beautiful Theophane, both in the form of sheep. From this encounter, Theophane became pregnant and later bore Ares Chrysomalius, the golden-fleeced ram, whose fleece inspired Jason and the Argonauts. Wow. Did you know that?
No.
I didn't either. I didn't know a lot of this stuff. I mean, it was... wow. Yeah. So, yeah. The golden rain thing with Zeus, there was a little blue link there. Let's go check that link out. In Greek mythology, Danae was the daughter and only child of King Asterius of Argos and his wife Queen Eurydice. She was the mother of the hero Perseus by Zeus. She was credited with founding the city of Arden in Latium during the Bronze Age. Disappointed by his lack of male heirs, we already know that, he wanted to keep her that way. Zeus came to her in the form of golden rain, which is just gross and weird, and Zeus is creepy. Unwilling to provoke the wrath of the gods or the Furies by killing his offspring and grandchildren, King Asterius cast Danae and Perseus into the sea in a wooden chest. The sea was calmed by Poseidon, and at the request of Zeus, the pair survived. They were washed ashore on the island of Seriphos, where they were taken in by Dictys, the brother of King Polydictes, who raised Perseus to manhood. The king was charmed by Danae, but she had no interest in him. Consequently, he agreed not to marry her, only if her son would bring him the head of the Gorgon Medusa. All right. So there we go. The Greek gods are seriously different, to say the least. Jimmy? Would you say that's a good way to put it?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about, how much time do we have left before we have to go to commercial?
4 minutes.
4 minutes. So, we've discussed ancient Egypt, we've discussed ancient Greece, right? You hear the stories about ancient Greece and they're very romanticized. Like, it never really occurred to me to look into it. What's interesting to me, personally, is that story that we read with the birth of Athena's son, right? And according to that story, there were 3 sisters who opened the box, and one of them had a name that was very similar to Pandora. So maybe that's the start of the Pandora myth. I don't know. I'm going to have to look into that because I think that's, would make very interesting reading. Now, we've discussed ancient Greek and ancient Egyptian sexual practices. When we come back, I think we're going to take a deep look, or a surface glance, because it might be too scary to take a deep look, at the sexual practices of ancient China. What do you think, Jimmy?
Sounds good.
And what other culture, what other ancient civilization should we look at? You want to look at the Romans? You want to look at India? What? Or you have another idea?
No, you could go with it.
Okay. All right. Then we will look at China when we come back, and we will decide whether it's Romans or India after that. All right. Let's break for some commercials and pay some bills. When we come back, we will be discussing what was ancient sex like in ancient China after these messages.
Buddy, you're a boy, make a big noise, playing in the street, gonna be a big man someday. You got mud on your face, you big disgrace, kicking your can all over the place.
Are you hangry? Know the signs. Uncontrollable yelling.
Why aren't you egg rolls?
Hallucination.
Sushi.
Pants discomfort.
I hate you, pants.
Hangry. It can happen to anyone. Fortunately, there's E24, the app that tells hunger to shut up.
Egg rolls. Thanks, Snoop.
E24. In my medical opinion, it's the best way to order food online, baby.
Hey everyone, as you all know, summer is now here and everyone wants sexy summer skin. I'm partnered with Rodan & Fields, the #2 premium skincare company in the US. We have some fun treats for you guys. Check out my website at www.ewinters.myrandf.com. But wait, there's more. Join as a preferred customer to get 10% off and free shipping for all these amazing products that I'm currently obsessing over. Or email me for a free mini facial or free consultation at ewintersrf@gmail.com to get your sexy summer glow. Hey everyone, I want to tell you all about an amazing salon. Joyce's, located at 132 Ferry Street in Everett, Massachusetts. Joyce's specializes in the latest techniques in coloring, styling, cutting, and beach waves. Joyce's features Sukesha all-natural nutrient products and organic color. Joyce's full-service spa and salon, located at 132 Ferry Street, Everett, Massachusetts. 617-387-6688. Specializing in you.
And now, another fresh insight from Roger Berkowitz, President and CEO of Legal Seafoods. If your wife can't take the time to test your tuna for purity, then why should you take the time to come to a complete stop before letting her out of the car? Just saying. Legal Seafoods. If it isn't fresh, it isn't legal.
Welcome back to this week's episode of Talk Time with Val. You know what I decided to do, Jimmy? I decided to go through the what sex was like in ancient China one, and then to look at some very strange sexual practices from different cultures around the world. Happy Valentine's Day, Jimmy. Right?
Oh, yeah.
If we have some time, we can look at the Indian sexual culture. Okay, although, honestly, to discuss the Indian sexual culture, you probably need another 2-hour show. Just saying. Because, of course, that's the Kama Sutra and stuff. Didn't we have a series of shows trying to discuss that? We never really covered it all, did we?
I don't know.
That was a while back. Okay. What sex was like in ancient China? This is by Lyra Radford. Sex in ancient China and Chinese views on sexuality have undergone dramatic changes. In early Chinese society, homosexual, bisexual, and extramarital sex was socially acceptable. Then Taoist sexual practices came into play, which were more spiritual in nature than previous sexuality. Do you know there is a book called China Gate that was, I think it was like discussing the opening of China to the Western world, the political scape, and in it, it was extremely detailed, right, Jimmy? If you get my drift. And in it, there was a scene where a young married couple were trying to rediscover their lusts for each other. And they went up to these temples, right? And the woman went with let's call them nuns, because they weren't really nuns, but I don't know what else to call them, right? And the man went with the woman went with the priests, and the man went with the nuns. And it was like a 4-day ritual where they did all kinds of sexual things to the man and the woman, like group orgies, but they would not allow them to orgasm, right? And think about any graphic thing you could think about that could possibly cause intense sexual arousal or erotic, stimulation, and that's the stuff that they did to them. And at the end of that period of time, they put the man and the woman, the married couple, into a room together. Remember, they have now been on the cusp of orgasm for days, right? But they haven't been allowed to orgasm. They put them in a room together and let them go at it like rabbits until they pass out. Apparently that practice is actually, that tradition is actually practiced in some places in China. And they say that if you do not have the physical capability of it, many people die during the final culmination. What do you think about that, Jimmy?
I'll take the risk.
You'll take the risk. Oh my god. Okay. Excuse me. Alright, so like we said, ancient China, women were yin and men were yang, the essence, and they could merge and share their energy with each other. This concept led men in ancient China to prostitutes to acquire as much energy as possible. In ancient China, sexuality was unrestricted and practiced indiscriminately. It's difficult to pinpoint exactly what sex was like in ancient China because it was so many things. The following list that I will discuss with you guys explores the many facets of ancient Chinese sexuality while providing some very strange dynastic China sex facts. So, cave people made prehistoric bisexual porn. You believe that, Jimmy?
What was it?
In China, cave people made prehistoric bisexual porn. The people of Xinjiang, a remote region of northwest China, are not only responsible for creating the earliest form of pornography, but also some of the most graphic pornographic artwork in the world. The carvings were discovered, and yeah, Jimmy, when paintings, they actually carved this stuff out of rock, okay? The carvings were discovered in the 1980s by Chinese archaeologist Wang Bingkao. Among other things, the 3,000-year-old petroglyphs depict a massive bisexual orgy complete with monkey masks. Oh my lord. There's a picture here, Jimmy. There's a picture of the carvings on the wall. I'm going to send you the link so you could take a look at these things while I'm reading the article, okay?
Okay.
All right. You probably, I don't know. This is just weirdness. Men loaned out their wives for the night in ancient China. Oh my god. China was more hospitable than most ancient societies, to say the least. It was common practice for men to let travelers have sex with their wives. It was believed travelers were distinguished, and sexy time with them would bring in new blood and herald a better future. Husbands would set travelers up with a place to stay and ensure that all of his needs were met. Wow, Jimmy, to be a hitchhiker through ancient China, huh?
Yeah, really.
You believe that, though? Like, they were treated like gods. You know, the husband would basically set the traveler up with a place to stay, bed to sleep in, and a wife to keep it cozy. Okay. Emperors had complex schedules to manage their constant sexcapades. In ancient China, emperors juggled a very full and complex sex schedule, which was essentially a tightly controlled rotation of concubines chosen from a roster of thousands of women. Emperor Shuzhang II, AD 581 to AD 618, for instance, had one main queen, 2 deputy queens, 6 royal consorts, 72 madams, and 3,000 palace maidens. 3,000 palace maidens, Jimmy. Like, seriously, he could not possibly be with all of them in 1 year, could he?
Yeah, you can when you start doing them 6 at a time.
Holy crap. I don't even... Nope, he would have to do 10 at a time. Approximately. It was believed that organizing the emperor's sex life into a regimented order was essential to maintaining the well-being of the entire Chinese empire. The Great Chinese Calendar clocks of the 10th century were not used to keep track of time, but rather to decide the schedule, rotation, and time for the women who slept with the emperor. Secretaries kept record of the emperor's sex life with brushes dipped in imperial vermilion. So basically, being born into the royal family and being emperor meant that you had to just, spend your life constantly having sex, basically. In China and some other Asian countries, age is determined from the moment of conception, not from the moment of birth. The imperial Chinese believed that women were most likely to conceive on the nights nearest the full moon, when the yin or female influence was strong enough to match the potent yang or male force of the emperor. It was believed that on these nights, children with strong virtues would be produced. As a result, the empress and spouses slept with the emperor around the full moon, and the lower-ranking women, whose main function was to nourish the emperor's yang with their yin, slept with him around the time of the new moon. A rotation described in the record of the rites of the Chu dynasty was as follows. The Chu dynasty was between 1120 to 256 BC. The lower-ranking women come first. The higher-ranking women come last. The assistant concubines, 81 in number, share the imperial couch 9 nights in groups of 9. The 9 spouses and the 3 consorts are allotted 1 night to each group, and the empress also alone 1 night. On the 15th day of every month, the sequence is complete, after which it repeats in reverse order. So basically, Jimmy, he had 9 per night.
Alright, it wasn't that far off.
You weren't. Some emperors kept the names of their favorite wives, consorts, and concubines on jade tablets kept in their bedchambers. The most active emperors had 50 or more of these tablets. Excuse me. When an emperor selected the woman he wanted, he turned over the tablet with her name on a teak table. A eunuch then rushed to the woman's chamber, took off her clothes to make sure she wasn't concealing a weapon, wrapped her in gold cloth, carried her through the palace since she could barely walk with her bound feet, and deposited her at the foot of the emperor's bed. The eunuch then recorded the date to verify later whether or not the emperor was the father of any children born to the woman. For decades, the communist government pretended that premarital sex, extramarital sex, prostitution, and sexually transmitted diseases were problems that existed in foreign countries but not in China. In the Mao era, brothels were shut down. People were fired for having affairs and sent to jail for living with their boyfriend or girlfriend. Married couples in communes were forced to live in sexually segregated barracks and were allowed 30-minute conjugal visits once a week. Prostitution and other vices were controlled in part by monitoring people's housing, appearance, and lifestyle. The government outlawed pornography, called recreational sex a bourgeois pastime, abolished sex education classes, and encouraged women to dress in baggy Mao suits rather than immodest clothing. In the Mao era, Andrew Jacobs wrote in the New York Times, "Love, let alone sexual pleasure, was seen as a bourgeois predilection that threatened to distract the masses from class struggle, food production, and industrialization. It was just like in Orwell's 1984, with anti-sex youth groups advocating celibacy." Chinese sexologist Li Yinhe also spent parts of her adolescence digging ditches in the countryside, told the New York Times. "Everyone I knew was a virgin until they got married." This is the difference between ancient sex and modern culture, right? Right, this was written in the New York Times on March 6, 2015, so this is just 2 years ago. Writing a love letter was considered a crime. A small romantic gesture could result in a person being labeled a bad element and persecuted along with counter-revolutionaries and rich peasants. During the Cultural Revolution, any traditional erotica and pornography found by the Red Guard was destroyed. In 1981, the Communist Party declared young men and women should control the sluice gates of passion and not have sex until they were married. One Chinese doctor told the New York Times, "For decades, sex was totally unmentionable. People who talked about it were persecuted and regarded as hooligans. But in the 80s, the subject came up in fits and starts. And today, if a magazine doesn't have sex, its sales will certainly fall." So, basically, we haven't come full rotation, but you gotta say that there was some kinky stuff going on back in the day in ancient China, right? Not as kinky as the Greeks, though, right, Jimmy? Nobody tops the Greeks and the Egyptians. But, even their cave people had bisexual pornography. Come on, they were the first people who produced porn, Jimmy. You must love them for that.
Absolutely.
There you go. All right. So, let's see. The princess who liked orgies at the brothel. Does that sound like a story you want to read, Jimmy? What a fairy tale story, right? The princess who liked orgies at the brothel. In 14th century China, brothels were legal, registered, tax-paying businesses. Do you think that brothels should be legal, registered, tax-paying businesses in modern-day America, Jimmy?
Absolutely.
They are in the state of Nevada.
Well, yeah.
I never understood that. How can they say that it's legal in Nevada but nowhere else?
Yeah, I know. So wasn't casinos. The only place they allowed them was in Nevada. But now everybody's got them.
Yeah, so you're hoping that they allow brothels everywhere now?
They'll eventually get around to it.
And weed, right?
Weed is already illegal in, I think it's 28 states.
Did I tell you that Marlboro, I saw a picture, I'm not sure if it's true or not, you could go look it up, but I saw a picture of a pack of quote-unquote cigarettes produced by Marlboro, and it's weed cigarettes, and apparently it's supposed to be around $80-something a box.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 20 prepackaged weed cigarettes, and they're packaged.
That's about a half an ounce.
I have no idea. 20 cigarettes is only a half an ounce?
Yeah, I usually get 40 joints out of an ounce.
Are you kidding me?
No.
But if it's a cigarette, doesn't feel like Like a box of cigarettes doesn't feel like it's only an ounce. It feels heavier than that.
No, if there's 20 of them, it's only a half an ounce.
Really? I never really thought about it. But yeah, so but here's the thing, right? The Marlboro weed cigarettes, right? If it's real. Apparently, let's see. Let's look at it. Marlboro weed cigarettes. Philip Morris introduces Marlboro marijuana cigarettes. Now, if it's real and they really do introduce these, then let me ask you something. People having these cigarettes, wouldn't you, if you're a pot smoker, right? Wouldn't you take it and put it into your regular box if you're crossing state lines where it's illegal?
But yeah, you'd either smoke it or hide it.
I have no idea how much weed costs. Okay? But that seems ridiculously expensive. Like $80, 80 something bucks.
That's like 160 an ounce. That's cheap.
Oh, really?
If it's good pot, yeah.
I have no idea. How much does it cost?
Like 300, 320.
For an ounce?
Yeah, for good stuff.
So when you hear stories about police burning 400 kilograms of it.
Exactly.
It's
what a waste. They could be using that for medical marijuana. That's just a fucking waste.
Well, I'm talking about back in the day when you would hear those stories, right?
Yeah,
because
I know.
You haven't really heard those in a while. But when you hear hundreds and hundreds of kilograms being burned, that's a lot of money. I never realized it was so expensive. I really didn't.
I had a brother-in-law that was chief of police in Dade, Miami, and he had 600 bales of marijuana that he got on a bus. He showed me a picture of it.
What'd you do?
I drooled, cried.
What'd he do, destroy it?
Oh yeah, that's what they did. They burned it.
Did you see the post I linked you with? It says images for the Marlboro weed cigarettes. I poked you with the pictures. Did you see it?
I'm opening it now.
Okay.
Oh yeah, with the green leaf.
Yeah, it has a little green
And they
leaf
did
on
put
it.
a filter on it. See, that's what stops a lot of the THC from getting through. So I wouldn't buy them right off the bat unless they were filterless.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you could rip the filter off. I don't know. If it's cheaper than buying the other stuff, like you said, people might just do it. You never know.
Marlboro cannabis, that's what they're calling it, huh?
And this chick with the pink fingernail polish, flip them over and put them inside a regular Marlboro box in order to transport them.
Right.
You know? But I'm like, dude, this is... Marlboro is setting up a distribution ring, apparently. Snopes says that I don't think it's supposed to be real, though. I think it's supposed to be fake. Philip Morris bringing Marlboro M brand marijuana cigarettes to the market. Philip Morris is the world's biggest cigarette producer, and there have been posts all over Facebook, etc., that they're bringing marijuana cigarettes to the market. Like I said, I don't think that if it's illegal in most states or in a lot of states that they'll do it, you know? Apparently it's false. It's just a hoax that's been rumors that's just playing around. Jimmy, are you disappointed? Well, no wonder it's only $86 a box, right? Because it's not real. It might as well be $2 a box, right, Jimmy? Not real. Jimmy's all disappointed. He's gone off to a corner to cry.
I'm here.
Okay. So, anyway, I got off topic because I was talking about brothels that should be tax-paying businesses. Just like in 14th century China, brothels were legal, registered tax-paying businesses. There was no social stigma associated with visiting prostitutes during this time. Sung Dynasty princess Shan Yin even had her own custom bed made to accommodate up to 30 men who would pleasure her simultaneously. Okay, so it wasn't just brothels where it was female workers, but male workers as well. She had a custom bed made so that up to 30 men could pleasure her at the same time. What? How is that even possible? Is that even possible? Jimmy? Jimmy's all quiet.
Yes.
How is that even possible? Okay. Emperor Su Yang used wheelchairs to trap virgins. Okay. Emperor Su Yang II, AD 581 to 618, used a customized wheelchair to ensnare teenage virgins in the optimal position for intercourse. It was called the virgin wheelchair, and when a young woman sat in it, clamps sprung up holding her arms down and spreading her legs apart. Then a mechanized chair cushion tilted ever so slightly, positioning her just right. Once the chair did its work, the virgin was ready to gain the royal favor. So he had a special chair made, Jimmy? Jimmy?
What?
Did you hear that?
Hear what?
Why aren't you paying attention?
I'm cooking a cheeseburger.
Oh, you didn't tell me that, so I'm talking to you, dude. Come on. Emperor Su Yang II used a customized wheelchair to ensnare teenage virgins in the optimal position for intercourse. It was called the virgin wheelchair, and when a young woman sat on it, clamps sprung up holding her arms down and spreading her legs apart. Then a mechanized chair cushion tilted ever so slightly, positioning her just right. Once the chair did its work, the virgin was ready to gain royal favor. So basically it's a rape chair.
Nice.
Are you kidding me? And they have pictures of this contraption. Okay. Sex education involved monkeys and group sex. Erotic images were painted on silk as learning materials for newlywed couples before their big performance on their wedding night. Some of these titles date back to Eastern Han period, AD 23 to 220, and didn't exactly set the stage for a romantic evening between a man and a wife. Many depict group sex or partner swapping, and one shows a couple having sex while another man and a mulberry tree full of monkeys watch. A mulberry tree full of monkeys. Okay. Taoism encouraged men to withhold ejaculation. Taoists believe that losing too much yin, the essence of life, could result in illness or death. They call it Jing. Jing. Of all the things in the human body, semen contains the most Jing. Perhaps it's no coincidence Jing sounds just like jizz. When ancient Chinese Taoist men had sex, it was in their best interest to refrain from ejaculating. Ancient Taoists believed that semen not ejaculated would travel to the brain and nourish the being. Sex with virgin leads to immortality. So wait a minute. Let's go back to the whole not ejaculating things. So they deliberately gave themselves blue balls, Jimmy. I guess Jimmy's cooking. That's just, okay, weirdness. Wouldn't that be painful? Wouldn't that be painful? They deliberately gave themselves blue balls?
Yes.
I mean, you would think that would be painful, but okay. Sex with virgins could lead to immortality. According to legend, the first emperor of China, known as the Yellow Emperor, became immortal by having sex with thousands of young virgins. It's believed in Taoism that any man can gain immortality this way. The men of ancient China made it their life's mission to have sex with as many young virgins as possible. I'm looking at the time and I'm thinking that we just have a few minutes left to go, don't we, Jimmy? 6 minutes? So I gotta wrap this up. Jimmy, you're not answering me. How much time?
1 minute.
1 minute. Okay. I really need to put my glasses on. Alright, so it looks like that's all the time we have tonight for this week's episode of Talk Time with Val. I'm a little bit traumatized and I need to go wash my eyes out from the things that I've just seen, but I hope that this sheds some new light on your Valentine's Day experiences, what was taboo, what was weird, and what is not weird anymore. So if your partner asks you for some special time tonight, just be grateful you're not living in ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, or ancient China. That's all we have for you tonight. Join us again next week for another scintillating episode of Talk Time with Val. Until then, be well, be good, and blessed be.